I'm delighted to kick off our afternoon session where we're going to hear from Silicon Valley, quite literally. We're going to hear from Mayor Sam Liccardo of San Jose, who's going to come up here and give a very brief talk on their various accomplishments in mobility. Mayor Liccardo, please.
Well, good afternoon. I'll try that again. I know we're all just getting back from lunch, still waking up. Good afternoon. All right, I'm fired up to be with you here in LA. I'm particularly happy to be here because I managed to miss Burning Man this year. And this is about as cool as it gets if you're in the transportation space, at least if you wear a tie like I do. So I'm thrilled to be with you all. And I'm always pleased to be back in LA. You are doing incredible things down here, both the city and the region. And since this is the place that gave us the car culture, I'm glad you're helping to take it away right now with the incredible efforts, very ambitious efforts to build out transit, and all we're seeing now with micromobility in Santa Monica and how that's booming throughout the state and the country. You all have much to be proud of. I was supposed to be talking about San Jose today, but I think it's more important for us to talk about what we all have in common, which is the challenges we face among all Western cities in the United States, which all generally developed among a pretty similar pattern, but what we call the donut pattern of development. That is, modest downtowns, then the automobile came around and we grew very quickly, and now we have extraordinarily expansive suburbs with a giant hole in the middle, and transportation experts throughout the country are trying to figure out how exactly we retrofit our very suburban cities for what is a future that will demand urban development, urban transport, and transit. And so I'm certainly interested always in seeing what's going on in LA, and I know we trade a lot of ideas, Mayor Garcetti and I do. I'm proud of some of the progress we've made, but I was reminded just how far we have to go when I was sitting down for dinner about a year ago. Former Mayor Antonio Villaraigosa was in town, and the first thing he says to me when he gets out of the car and sits down with me is, you know, you guys have really bad traffic. And I thought, this is the former mayor of LA who just said, my city has bad traffic. It's tough, it's tough. So the great twin challenges facing all cities throughout California and certainly large cities throughout the West, particularly where we've seen so much tech development, the two twin challenges, housing and transportation. And we know this is something that's vexing all of us. And there are really key causes here. We've got an economy that is increasingly forcing inequitable results, a widening divide, as those with high skills are rewarded very well in this economy, particularly with technological change and globalization, and the gap grows between those who have and those who do not. And then, of course, the other key cause of our maladies is growth and how we're going to manage growth. And frankly, nobody's figured it all out yet, but certainly in the city of San Jose, we're struggling as much as anyone. We've got the 10th largest city in the nation now, more than 1 million people. We're going to add another 400,000 people in the next 20 years. When I said that recently in an audience, there was a lady who had Make America Great hat on. You've seen the red MAGA hats, right? They're not real common in San Jose, but she had one, and she objected when I said that we're going to add 400,000 people, and she said, well, why don't we keep them out? And I said, well, you know, I'm not exactly the guy who's a proponent for building the wall, but I'm pretty sure even if we did, it wouldn't do much because 2/3 of that growth, at least in communities like San Jose, is projected to be your children and grandchildren. And then she responded and said, well, I don't even like my children. And like any good politician, I said, well, you're stuck with them. And hopefully they're voting for somebody else. So our task, of course, with these twin challenges of housing and transportation is how we can expand affordable, equitable, sustainable mobility options in a world of very scarce public resources. And certainly we know those public resources are scarce despite the best efforts, and certainly down in LA, you've done a tremendous job with the bond measure, as they have in Seattle, and in my city of San Jose, I've led or co-led 3 different transit measures in the last 10 years. We know it's hard work. It's not easy asking taxpayers for money, but it is something we have to do because you probably figured out the federal government isn't going to bail us out anytime soon. And we're all waiting for the great infrastructure plan to roll out from the Trump administration, but you might as well keep waiting because I think they've assigned the Florida Registrar of Voters on that task, so it's going to be a while. So what it leaves local communities to do more than any time is that we've got an imperative to innovate. The dollars are simply not going to roll in, and we have to find ways to use more innovative approaches to improve more sustainable, affordable, equitable transportation solutions. And in the city of San Jose, which is the largest city of Silicon Valley, we take great pride in our spirit of innovation. We were actually the birthplace, for those of you who don't know, of fruit cocktail. We also invented the Eggo waffle. If you don't think those are important innovations, I encourage you to ask your 6-year-old. They will refute you. Nonetheless, so our opportunities ahead around innovation are really fourfold, as I see it. First, we need to reimagine and retrofit city planning. And I know there's a lot of talk about that and how we can do it, but there's some interesting work being done that we need to highlight. Second, certainly what emerged from the scooter battles of Santa Monica and has certainly spread beyond as we think about bike share and so many other options for micromobility. We know micromobility has to be part of this solution. Third, certainly electrification. And fourth, autonomous vehicles, NAVs. So let me just start with that first issue. How is we retrofit our cities that have been built really for automobiles, into cities that are built for people. And certainly an awful lot of that happens at the macro level, where we build stuff, how dense we build it. But I think there are some important opportunities that we need to increasingly recognize that are too easily overlooked. One is high-speed rail, as you probably noticed, is not typically uttered by many politicians seeking re-election in the state of California. It has become something pretty unpopular for a variety of reasons, and I suppose the climbing price estimates haven't helped. But as we think about it, as coastal communities increasingly struggle trying to build affordable housing against the odds, we have to increasingly recognize that high-speed rail is an opportunity for us to enable affordability and particularly to enable economic opportunity in the valley for so many who would love to have jobs on the coast. And certainly we're eager to see it arrive in San Jose. We'll be the first major city in the United States with a high-speed rail station, and we know and we want it to continue to get built all the way here to LA and beyond. But it's going to be critical for us. Second, we need to think about how we can build transit in cities that are already largely built out. And that's a huge challenge, which is hugely expensive and hugely disruptive. I know as many of you have experienced with various subway projects in the greater LA basin. In the city of San Jose, we're going to start with an effort in just, we hope, a year and a half to start on the extension of BART, which is a subway system that runs throughout the Bay Area, from North San Jose, where it has just been built, all the way through downtown using single-bore technology. That is, you put the train going both directions in a single tunnel, and you manage to smush it all in there enough. Hopefully the trains don't hit one another. I'm pretty sure that doesn't happen. But the only place it's been tried in the world so far is Barcelona, and they've done so pretty successfully. The benefit of single-bore technology is that it enables you to actually go in and get a tunnel built in a very dense area without an enormous amount of laydown and disruption to what is otherwise a very dense urban area as our downtowns are. And I think if we can get this right, this is going to be a critical way to save a lot of costs, a lot of pain, and a lot of time for a lot of cities that are looking to do the same. So much so that we think that we're doubling down on that strategy combined with other strategies, high-speed rail, as I mentioned before, electrifying Caltrain and a lot of other systems, to converge at a single point near a downtown what we call Diridon Station, with 8 separate transit lines that will all converge in the same place. This will become the busiest multimodal station in the United States. I'm sorry, in the Western United States, I should say, excuse me. With the help of private sector investment, Google is moving a small campus in at that area, about 8 million square feet, and we certainly hope with this private-public partnership we can do something extraordinary. But as we think about city planning and the opportunities, it's not just at the macro level with the big projects and where we put big buildings, it's at the micro level. And we know well that how we're thinking about using public space is so incredibly and increasingly important in our cities. We think about, for example, road diets and how we can install bike lanes with segregated and separated spaces. What we're finding in the city of San Jose more and more is that these segregated bike lanes and the physical separations we're providing for bikes isn't just about the bikes. We're seeing on several corridors where we've been measuring reductions in traffic accidents involving automobiles by as much as 40%. Why? Because people are driving slower. Road diets narrow the frame of reference for the driver. People drive slower. It's safer for pedestrians. It's safer for drivers. It's safer for all of us. So reutilizing and rethinking our public space is so critically important as we reimagine our cities. And as we think about the opportunities for creating curb cafes on sidewalks and converting streets that are probably underutilized into parks and open streets efforts, which I know have been very successful down here in LA. These are the great opportunities for us to reclaim our public space for our communities. And we're seeing more and more experimentation of this throughout the country, and it's an exciting time, I think, for all of us. Okay, so secondly, I mentioned micromobility as a great opportunity for us. And certainly we all have seen the bike share programs and the scooters, which seem to be ubiquitous these days. The great challenge for mayors and for lots of other city officials who worry about things like collisions and harm and liability, frankly, is that these scooters are not terribly well managed. And especially when we think about all the collisions that are increasingly happening on sidewalks throughout the state and throughout the country, this is a serious issue. And so I partnered with Ted Winter, the mayor of Santa Monica, a few weeks ago, and we sent a letter to the CEOs of several of the scooter companies. What we said to them was this: look, you've already seen bans in place in cities like San Francisco and Seattle, because in very dense urban areas, this is difficult to manage, and simply the collision risk is too great for many cities. That may be the continued path for a lot of cities, particularly as we're starting to see liability claims roll in. And let's face it, the city is going to be the first one to get sued, and perhaps appropriately so, because our first job is to protect the safety of our residents. Now, a ban isn't something I've ever advocated for, but it seems to me that there's a real opportunity for innovation here. And so what we said in the letter was, innovate with us. Literally, let's innovate or bust. You need to figure out a way to keep these scooters off a sidewalk, which, by the way, it's illegal for them to be there under state law. And we know there's geofencing technology that's existed for years that can enable us to do that. We see it in operation every time we go shopping and we're pushing a shopping cart a little too far from the Safeway. So we know the technology exists, so let's figure out how we can do it together. In about a week and a half, San Jose is going to announce that it will allow permitting only for companies that are utilizing some geofencing technology that will essentially keep the scooters off the sidewalks in dense urban areas where we have segregated or separated bike lanes that can accommodate them. And it'll also help with the parking, which we know is a big issue because it creates certainly a lot of issues for folks who may be in wheelchairs or seniors and so forth who are tripping over much of the equipment on sidewalks. And we think geofencing can help enormously there as well. And we've been certainly in active conversation with the industry. And so this is the time for all of us to innovate together. And I hope that what will emerge from this in a few months is we'll see clear demonstrations of how we can make micromobility with scooters work in a city where we need room for all of us. Finally, last two issues, electrification and AVs. Electrification, of course, is taking many forms in the transportation industry. In the city of San Jose, along with a lot of partners all the way up to the city of San Francisco, we've got a train line that was built during the administration of Abraham Lincoln. And it's exactly the same technology, which is pretty astounding for the heart of Silicon Valley, right? So we're undertaking a $2 billion effort to electrify the system and try to expand it and do some better things with it. This is called Caltrain, by the way. And as we think about electrification, certainly of transit, buses come to mind. I know there have been big announcements down here in LA. Up in my neck of the woods, we've now electrified our city bus fleet, and we're electrifying our regional bus fleet as well. And there's some great local California manufacturers who are doing incredible work that certainly deserve our attention. But it seems to me that the great benefit of electrification is only going to come as we're able to move the electric grid toward renewables. And there are efforts right now throughout the state in what we call community choice aggregation programs, or community choice energy, where individual cities and counties are giving their residents and businesses the ability to choose the source of the electricity every year when they sign up. And what we're seeing in smaller communities throughout the state where this has been tried is a dramatic improvement in the share of the electricity portfolio that comes from renewables. And so San Jose became the largest city in the country to launch a community choice energy program just a few months ago. San Diego just followed us, so I guess now they're the biggest. But the critical battle here is to ensure that communities can continue to do this. We're offering our residents as a base a portfolio that's 45% renewable, and residents can sign up for as much as 100% renewable. Keep in mind the base will be cheaper than the incumbent utility PG&E offers. The 100% renewable will be just a penny more per kilowatt. We're going to see those numbers dramatically improve because we know that the renewable contracts that we're pushing are actually signing up for are much cheaper than utilities signed up for 15 years ago. Now, why am I saying all of this in a transportation conference? Well, because we all believe in electrification of the transit infrastructure and transportation infrastructure, including EV charging stations and everything else that we want to see out there. But it only matters if we're really pushing the envelope and reducing our consumption of organic fuels. And right now, we're in the midst of a major battle with the Public Utilities Commission, which is pushing back on local communities' efforts to be able to start and successfully deploy community choice energy programs. And essentially, they're taking the utility side and pushing major costs into local communities in ways that's putting these community choice energy programs at a great disadvantage. This is a great battle for all of us if we care about saving the planet. And I'm guessing many of you are in this work because you care about saving the planet. So I think it's important work that we're going to need to take on together. And you're going to read more about how cities throughout the state are banding together in this effort. Finally, autonomy. There have been a lot of different approaches in cities throughout the country trying to figure out how we unlock the opportunity on autonomous vehicles. San Jose's approach has been a bit different than most. We benefit from having an awful lot of these AV companies in and around us in Silicon Valley, and so we decided to put out an RFP with a focus on ensuring that autonomy would work for public use cases. It wouldn't simply be folks who are driving around to be able to demonstrate what they do for themselves. We want to see how we can improve mobility for seniors who are too low income to be able to afford automobiles and too far away from transit. How can we use autonomy to help homeless veterans who recently lost a bus line because of cuts in the local transit programs? And we think that by putting out to companies the challenge to be able to solve these public problems for us, we can develop partnerships that will be more lasting and more beneficial and, frankly, much better accepted by the residents we collectively serve. Because we know that for many, autonomy and autonomous vehicles pose a major threat. The threat of loss of many jobs, and we know that is the nature of technological change and certainly of automation. And so we need to demonstrate the public good, or this could get killed on the vine politically. And so we're partnering. Mercedes just launched a pilot just a couple weeks ago. We're partnering on seeing how we can use these vehicles for the public good with data sharing, with co-learning with the private industry to understand better how we can all benefit. And certainly as we think about autonomous vehicles, we shouldn't simply be confined to passenger vehicles, because we know the congestion that AVs may cause may be as debilitating as whatever we think we're saving with autonomy. And so integrating autonomy with transit is going to be increasingly imperative. What we're looking at increasingly in our valley is how we can retrofit underutilized rail lines for autonomous buses in the same corridors, knowing that we can move more buses that can transport more people at lower cost and hopefully expand more opportunity for so many of our transit-dependent residents. The city that's able to get this done first is going to be brave. It's not easy. We know there are a lot of political hurdles to doing it. But as we think about the future of transit and a declining ridership that we're seeing throughout the country right now, as ride-sharing and other technologies are essentially reducing the fare box return for transit agencies nationwide, and we think about the rising costs that so many transit agencies are grappling with, we've got to innovate if we're going to keep transit relevant and if we're going to have the service available for those who depend on it the most, and those are typically those who are least affluent among us. And so all these are great opportunities for us to explore together, and they won't be easy, and it's going to take some bumps and bruises along the way. But I look forward to partnering with many of you in this room, because I know you're in this for all the right reasons. And we've got to be in it together for the right reasons if we're going to make these innovations work. So I look forward to our great work together. Thank you very much.